Friday, 5th of June 2026. 3 Asia-Pacific AI stories before your first coffee. Seoul and Taipei's AI chip rally has reordered Asia's equity league table in 2026, with South Korea's Kospi surging roughly 90% and Taiwan's market climbing about 50% on the back of sustained semiconductor demand. Taiwan has now overtaken India to become the world's 5th largest equity market, trailing only the United States, mainland China, Japan, and Hong Kong. The combined valuation of TSMC, Samsung Electronics, and SK Hynix has reached approximately $4 trillion as all three supply the core silicon underpinning global AI infrastructure. Why it matters? Capital allocators rebalancing Asia exposure now face acute concentration risk. Taiwan's market is estimated at well over 80% exposure to AI-related revenue, and South Korea sits at around 60%, meaning any slowdown in hyperscaler capex or a shift in US export controls would hit both indices disproportionately hard. India's demotion to 6th place reshapes how global index funds weight the region, potentially redirecting passive flows away from Indian tech and financials toward Korean and Taiwanese semiconductor names. The second-order effect worth tracking is whether this concentration accelerates efforts by both governments to diversify their industrial bases beyond chips, or whether the sheer momentum of AI demand makes that politically impossible in the near term. Singapore is emerging as a live test bed for agentic AI in daily life, with a Deloitte survey finding that 15% of respondents have used AI systems that act on their behalf in the past 6 months. Use cases range from autonomous taxis, 6%, and AI-driven product purchases, 7%, to automated banking tasks, 8%. Across Southeast Asia, more broadly, 81% of companies report moving beyond experimentation into pilot or scaling phases, and nearly 90% say they plan to trial agentic AI. Why it matters? Singapore has launched what it describes as the world's first agentic AI governance framework, setting early ground rules for systems that operate with limited human oversight. That framework now becomes the reference template for regulators across ASEAN as adoption scales. Builders deploying autonomous agents in finance, transport, or commerce will need to design for auditability and human override from day one, not bolt it on later. Capital allocators should watch whether Singapore's framework accelerates or chills enterprise procurement of agentic tooling in the region. The concrete second-order effect to track is whether insurers and banks start requiring agentic AI compliance certification before onboarding vendors, creating a new gatekeeping layer across Southeast Asian supply chains. China's domestic AI stack is consolidating around DeepSeek and Huawei at serious scale. DeepSeek's V4 model was optimized to train and run on Huawei's Ascend processors rather than Nvidia hardware, and China's cloud giants have now committed to purchasing more than 500,000 Ascend 950 series units. ByteDance alone plans to spend over $5-6 billion on Huawei Ascend chips in 2026, implying roughly 350,000 units, with Alibaba and Tencent adding further large orders against a 2026 production target of approximately 750,000 units. Why it matters? US export controls were designed to starve China's AI labs of advanced compute, but the emerging picture is that restrictions are building a captive domestic customer base for Huawei that Nvidia cannot legally serve. DeepSeek's permanent 75% price cut on its V4 Pro tier, running entirely on Chinese silicon, pressures every rival in the market to prove they can match performance without American GPUs. Builders outside China, relying on Nvidia's pricing stability, should watch closely, because a parallel supply chain with its own price dynamics changes the global cost curve for inference. Capital allocators with exposure to Nvidia's China revenue, which was already declining, now face a structural demand shift rather than a cyclical one. The second order effect to track: whether Huawei's Ascend production can actually hit 750,000 units, because that bottleneck determines how fast this stack scales. That is your AIinAsia briefing for today. Stay sharp, build well, see you tomorrow.